Ayun, so good afternoon ulit. Pwede na siguro tayo mag-start, ano? I'm very sorry I was not able to attend our synchronous lecture scheduled yesterday kasi meron akong mga inasikaso sa school. No? So instead of asynchronous today, we're going to have a lecture, no? Which was supposed to be discussed yesterday lang naman. Okay? So, settled na ba tayong lahat? Okay, so I guess we are all set. And I cannot be able to share screen right now kasi yung laptop ko naglolo ko, hindi siya makasagap ng internet connection. So I'm just going to send to you the module after the lecture na lang. Ano? I was not able to send it kanina. So send ko mamaya ito. Yung module natin for module 2, no? Which will be the topic today. So, for your references. And then, we are going to record the lecture. Para nang sa ganun, if you wish to go back with it, nabalikan nyo yung mga lecture natin, meron kayong papakinggan. Okay? So, pwede na. So good afternoon guys, today's topic will be globalization and terrorism. So it's not only terrorism, we're going to be talking also some of the topic that has still a relationship with the introduction to the comparative models in policing. So basically, nandun pa lang tayo sa concept ng globalization and how it is impacting the policing system of different countries as well as ours. No? So again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to interrupt, or if you have clarifications, you can just cut me on my discussion. Okay. So for today's lecture, our topic in relation to the title Globalization and Terrorism will be the following. So we have here the causes of terrorism. We're going to be talking about the causes of terrorism. The different approaches used in studying or understanding the causes of terrorism. Now we have 3 of them. Then we are going to talk also about the globalization, the concept of globalization in relation to people smuggling or human smuggling. Now, and we also are going to discuss the impact of globalization and human trafficking. And lastly, we're going to be talking about the global implications. So how does the terrorism, the problem on terrorism, how does the problem on human smuggling, and how does the problem on human trafficking affects the policing system, or the our criminal justice in that sense. Okay. So those are the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So I do hope we or you could be able to learn something from this lecture. Okay, first thing first, we're going to be talking about the causes of terrorism. Ano nga ba yung dahilan, no, kung bakit tayo merong terrorism? Ano yung motivation behind, no? Bakit tayo or bakit merong mga ilan sa atin, no, or mga grupo na kung saan is pumapasok sila sa terrorism, no? So usually terrorism involves yung tinatawag nating political motivation or politically motivated reasons why they engage in such activities. So basically we have 3 way of viewing this, no? Meron tayong tatlong perspective, no, on how can we explain the causes of terrorism. Again, terrorism is a crime, no? Alam naman natin, terrorism is a crime, and crime has no specific or one factor that causes it. So there's a lot of factors that contributes with each other, no? That collaborate with each other in order for this problem to exist. So it's not only one. However, there are certain group of theories behind or explanation behind, no, na pwede nating makuha para lang ma-explain natin yung causes of terrorism. And they are subdivided into the following. Meron yung tinatawag nating psychological perspective, wherein they're viewing the reason or the causes of terrorism as motivated by behavior or self-motivation and so on. Ideological, from the word ideologies, these are more politically motivated, which syempre ano yan, terrorism yan eh. They are all politically motivated, but they have stronger, no, how do we call this, they have a stronger relationship to their beliefs, to their faith, and so on. So, mas matindi ang kanilang paniniwala. We will be having an example for this. I'm just introducing, And lastly, the strategic perspective, which views terrorism as a cause of political failure, and so on. We need to understand that the concept of terrorism is really politically motivated. They do commit crime that are similar to the crime committed by organized crime, no? But their only distinction is that their motivation is focused on political ideologies, no? Kung tatanungin anong pagkakaiba ng organized criminals or organized crime group doon sa mga political doon sa mga terrorists, one distinction that it's very apparent to them is the motivation of their crime, no? Ano ba yung organized crime natin na meron dito? For example, meron pa tayong Yakuza, no? How they are different from Al-Qaeda, for example. No? Al-Qaeda is a terrorist group. Yes? So, Al-Qaeda is a terrorist group.
Sir, medyo choppy po, sir.
Okay. Ala, sorry. Ayan, so pag medyo choppy guys, hindi ko alam kung ako yung may problema or ang signal natin. Anyway, there will be a recording for this kung medyo choppy para mabalikan nyo yung kompleto nating lecture. Baka mahina ng signal kasi hapon na naman dito. Ayun, so if we're going to distinguish the organized crime group from terrorist group, like for example, what's the distinction between Al-Qaeda and what's the distinction between Al-Qaeda and Yakuza? Yakuza is listed as an organized crime group, no? Al-Qaeda is listed as a terrorist group. They both commit crime involving smuggling, arms dealing, no? Crime of killing, sexual exploitation, prostitution, and so on. So they both commit crime. However, if we're going to look into their motivations, if the motivation is related to political ideologies, meaning they want to change something that has something to do with the political stance or the government and so on, yan yung i-classify natin na terrorist group, na. Pero kung pera lang talaga ang habol nila, like gusto nilang magpayaman, gusto nilang kumita ng malaki, no, then that would be classified as organized crime group, no? So that's the distinction that we could provide between those two. So now we're talking about terrorism, no? Let's say, for example, psychological perspective. Psychological perspective, sabi nga natin, they're looking into the reason that those who engage in terrorism are doing it because they are motivated purely by their own reasons. So yung mga terrorists natin na sumama sa mga terrorist group na under psychological perspective, no? Ang dahilan nila kung bakit sila sumama sa mga terrorist group is their own reason, no? Sa sarili nilang kadahilanan. So pwedeng ito yung mga tao na kung saan nakaranas ng pang-aabuso ng mga law enforcement entities or the government entities, no? Kaya sila sumali sa mga terrorist group. Marami tayong kwento na maririnig na kung saan ang isang tao inabuso ng sundalo, inabuso ng pulis, no? Inabuso ng mga political leaders, no? ang nangyayari is para sila ay makapaghiganti or para maibuhos nila ang kanilang hinanakit or sama ng loob sa ating gobyerno, sila ay sumasali sa mga terrorist group. That's very common. So yun din yung tinatake advantage of the majority of terrorist group that we have, like for example the New People's Army. Tinitignan nila yung mga tao na kung saan naging biktima ng pang-abuso ng ating gobyerno at sila ay inaakay na sumali sa kilusan. So, pag ganon, ang dahilan kung bakit nakisali ang isang tao sa isang terrorist group, that would be classified under psychological perspective. Their reason behind joining terrorist group is more on hate and desire for power. They wanted to revenge. They wanted to avenge their family. They hate. The government, they hate the political leaders, or they wanted to have power in the community. So that's under psychological perspective. Pwede kayong makarelate dito kasi alam nyo, today very common ang mga recruitment sa mga leftist organization. I believe I included this as ay hindi pala. I included this as one of the activity of other sections wherein I said, how are you going to solve? What are your proposal in solving this problem on student recruitments of on the doon sa mga makakaliwang grupo? Yan. So under psychological perspective yan, Meron naman yung tinatawag nating ideological perspective wherein they're viewing that terrorists or terrorism is caused by political ideologies. And pag sinabi natin ideologies, they're most likely related to a strong belief, values, principles of a certain group, and it's particular in aiming a certain goal. So meron tayong mga politically motivated organization, like for example is yung meron tayo dito sa Pilipinas, sa atin sa Pilipinas, of course, we have New People's Army, we have MILF, MNLF, we have Bangsamoro Freedom Fighter, and many more. Maraming mga organization that was listed as a terrorist group in our country. And all of them have their own ideologies. Let's say, for example, the NPA, which is against capitalism, gusto nila ang communism as a form of government, so they wanted to overthrow the government, the republic government of the Philippines, in order to change it into a communist one. So ang kanilang motivation is more on political change. Gusto nilang baguhin ang kasalukuyang gobyerno sa gobyerno na gusto nilang gawin, which is from republic, from democratic to communist. So yan yung kanilang reason. We also have yung example natin la Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, for example, is a Muslim extremist. They wanted to change how the Muslim countries are being ruled. Gusto nilang paalisin ng mga non-resident doon, ng mga non-Muslim residents of the Muslim countries. Gusto nila silang paalisin. So that's their motivation behind these terrorist activities or the creation of their terrorist organization. So if that is how the terrorist group is formed, then definitely they are motivated by their ideologies, yung kanilang mga pananaw, philosophies, and so on. We also have here yung tinatawag nating strategic perspective, wherein under strategic perspective, yung terrorism or terrorist group is formed as a response for yung tinatawag nating failure of politics. When a certain government, for example, fails to address the sentiments of the people, they tend to come up with their own strategy, to come up with their own organization to impose or para pilitin ng gobyerno doon sa gusto nilang mangyari. We could see yung tinatawag nating I don't know the how they call it, yung mga nasa Sabah before, So there's a dispute between Malaysia and Philippines in relation to Sabah, doon sa pinagtatalunan, pinag-aagawan na teritoryo na accordingly is sa Pilipinas. Pero right now, it is already occupied by the Malaysian government. There are people resident of that island, yung Sabah, which are native Muslims, I'm not sure if tama ako, So basically, ang gusto nila is ipaglaban ng gobyerno ang Sabah kasi ito ay talagang teritoryo daw accordingly ng Pilipinas. However, the government did not support their fight. The government seems like sold the island to the Malaysian government. So ang ginawa nila, they tried to solve the problem on their own by taking arms. So nag-alsa na sila. Humawak na sila ng mga baril para ipaglaban ang kanilang karapatan doon na mga residente at hindi dapat sila paalisin at hindi dapat kamkabin ng bansang yun yung kanilang isla. So that's a good example under strategic perspective. Once they turn into terrorists because of the failure of the government to address the sentiments of its citizens, especially in their fight, in their cause. Yan. So, pwedeng marami tayong mga examples na pasok dito, Other is like for example yung Bangsamoro, So right now we also have meron na tayong yung anong tawag na natin doon sa bago nating region kumbaga, Or the renamed ARMM, di Bangsamoro, I forgot. But sa di Bangsamoro. Now, let's say the government did not address that problem, hindi nila pinakinggan ang sentimiento ng mga Muslim brothers natin in that part of Mindanao. Of course, the result would be, pwede na naman tayo magkaroon ng terrorist group, at they will impose their own desire in relation to the territories that they hold, So yun yung mga iniiwasan or yun yung mga dapat tinitignan ng ating gobyerno, Dapat pinapakinggan ang mga sentimiento ng mga grupo ng ating mamamayan sapagkat kapag ito ay binabaliwala, may tendency na sila ay mag-alsa, at sila ay gumawa ng tinatawag natin terrorist group or sumali sa mga terrorist organization. Okay? So those are some of the causes that we can see why terrorism exists, because there are individuals who fall onto their psychological fall onto their behavior, onto their desires and so on, and their psychological perspective. Meron naman yung mga merong strong belief, they wanted change, they wanted to impose the change that they want to the government and so on. So strategic is terrorism as caused by political failure. Okay? Yan. So we have here next topic. This is no longer related to terrorism, but of course, these are related to the issues on globalization and policing. So we have here globalization and human smuggling or people smuggling in other references. What is people smuggling? And we have the term human trafficking, Human trafficking and human smuggling are quite different. Magkaiba sila. Ang konsepto kasi ng human smuggling is that voluntary. And human trafficking is involuntary. So parehas silang pumapasok sa tinatawag na pumapasok sa ibang bansa, But then magkaiba yung kanilang motivation. Pag sinabi nating human smuggling, ibig sabihin yung tao ay voluntary na pumasok sa ibang bansa illegally, So for example is gusto niyang pumunta sa Amerika, Kaya naghanap siya ng pwedeng tumulong sa kanya na pwedeng magpuslit sa kanya papuntang Amerika na hindi dumadaan sa legal na paraan. So that is human smuggling. Kapag merong coordination between the smuggler, and the person who was smuggled into that country, So ako, for example, gusto kong pumasok sa United States, manggagaling sa Mexico, Kaya nakiusap ako sa isang kakilala kong Amerikano, na pupuntang Amerika, babalik ng Amerika kahit ilagay niya na ako sa isang container, ilagay niya na ako sa loob ng isang sa loob ng sasakyan na sobrang sikip, sa trunk, sa likuran ng sasakyan, basta makapasok lang ako na hindi dumadaan ng legal. Ibig sabihin walang passport and whatsoever. So that's human smuggling kasi meron akong consent na naipasok ako doon illegally. Na? While human trafficking is quite different naman kasi ang human trafficking hindi niya alam na ganun pala ang kahihinatnan niya. No? So ang alam niya, it is legal to go there, no? But then pagpunta niya doon is puro pala pahirap ang mangyayari sa kanya. So they are usually related to sex slavery na kung saan is papangakuan yung isang tao, nabibigyan siya ng trabaho pag pinunta siya doon sa ibang bansa. Pagdating niya doon sa isang bansa is wala palang trabaho, ilalagay pala siya sa isang prostitution den, na kukunin yung kanyang mga passport, yung kanyang mga dokumento. Syempre wala siyang makakilala doon, anong mangyayari sa kanya? Kumbaga, doon na siya mamamalagi at doon na siya magiging slave kumbaga ng kanyang trafficker nung nagpasok sa kanya. No? Ang human smuggling usually ang relationship between the smuggler and the smuggled person, individual, ends kapag naipasok na, di ba? Ang usapan lang nila is kapag naipasok na, tapos na ang kanilang tapos na ang kanilang conspiracy. While for human trafficker and the victim, hindi doon natatapos kasi ang mga bibiktima sa kanya is either yung mismong nagpasok sa kanya doon sa bansa na yan or kaya ipapasa siya sa iba, which yung trafficker na yan, meron pa rin siyang connection doon sa bago niyang handler. No? So usually, mas serious ang kinakaharap na problema ng mga victims ng human trafficking than human smuggling. Kasi yung mga human smuggling, they are aware of the situation that they will be encountering pagdating nila doon. While human trafficking, yung mga victim ng human trafficking, they are not aware. Na hindi sila aware na ganun pala ang mangyayari sa kanila pagpunta nila doon. No? So yan usually, no, ang pagkakaiba nila. But now let's talk or focus on human smuggling. Ano? Bakit meron tayong mga kababayan or bakit may mga tao na kung saan is pumapayag sila na pumuslit or maipuslit sa ibang bansa na hindi dumadaal sa legal na proseso. Una sa lahat, opportunities. Okay? Maraming mga kababayan natin or maraming mga ibang tao, no, galing sa ibang bansa na kung saan ay sila ay naniniwala na magkakaroon sila ng mas maraming opportunities pag sila ay pumunta sa ibang bansa. No? For example, yung nga natin, sabi natin, land of the free, no? Ang United States. So maraming opportunities doon in terms of trabaho, in terms of education, and so on. So marami ang gustong pumasok doon, no? Marami ang gustong doon tumira, no? Sa mga mayayamang bansa. Kasi naniniwala sila na pag tumira sila doon sila nagtrabaho or makahanap sila ng trabaho, makachamba sila ng kung ano man, is yayaman din sila. So usually the motivation for human smuggling is that they are desiring huge profit in return. Now, handa silang makipagsapalaran kapalit ng malaking sasahurin kapag sila ay nakapasok ng trabaho or kapalit ng mas malaking oportunidad kapag sila ay nakapasok sa ibang bansa. Okay? Then we also have human trafficking. So we discussed this already kanina, no? Human trafficking as of today is already considered as the biggest, no? It's actually considered as the third largest criminal industry in the world, no? So daig niya pa ang crime rate in relation to arms trafficking or arms smuggling, no? Drug trafficking or drug dealing, talo niya pa yan, no? Mas mataas pa ang kaso ng human trafficking na nangyayari right now. This is pre-pandemic time. Kasi ngayon mahirap na. Mahirap nang magpalusot ng mga tao, no? Illegally or legally, mahirap nang mag-recruit kasi sobrang higpit na ng mga quarantine protocols, sobrang higpit na ng mga borders natin in relation to entry and exit. So we expect na ngayon bumaba ang case ng human trafficking, but pre-pandemic talagang sobrang taas ng case ng human trafficking natin, no? And usually ang mga human traffickers, ang tina-target nila yung mga babae, no? Sila yung pinapangakuan ng magandang trabaho, magandang mataas na pera, maraming opportunities, no? Pero pag sila ay naipasok na sa ibang bansa, sila naman ngayon ay dadalhin sa mga prostitution dens na controlled usually by criminal organization, no? Sabi nga ng United Nations, no, the estimate that trafficking in person generates usually about 7 to 10 billion dollars annually, no? So ang taas, ang laki ng kinikita ng mga ito. By the way, pag sinabi nating it generates income, no? It's not the victim of human trafficking ang kumikita, no? Hindi ibig sabihin na pag ikaw ay biktima ng human trafficker, ikaw yung kumikita. It's not you, no? Yung mga nagpapalakad or yung mga nagpapatakbo ng mga ganitong business na yung mga human traffickers na to, sila ang kumikita ng ganyang halaga, no? And usually, no, sad to say, they are usually being operated by criminal or huge criminal organization. Okay, so we're going to talk about the impact of that later on. So that's with regards to human smuggling, and then human trafficking. So how does human trafficking takes place? No? How does human trafficking takes place? Paano nangyayari yan? Usually human traffickers are looking for victims that are typically very young. No? Yung mga bata-bata ang kanilang tina-target kasi they are going to use them as a prostitute, no? So for prostitution, usually ang purpose nila kung bakit sila naghahanap ng mabibiktima ng human trafficking. Now, as you have heard already, no? Kasi ako ay naniniwala na inyo nang na-encounter yung term na human trafficking, na meron na kayong mga kwentong narinig relating this, no? But just an overview on how it is being committed. So we just discuss this for a moment, no? So usually traffickers are looking for victims primarily from developing countries where poverty is rampant, no? So tinitignan nila yung mga biktima doon sa mga lugar na medyo mataas ang poverty rate kasi alam nila na kapag ikaw ay may pangangailangan or may matinding pangangailangan ay willing kang mag-take risk, no? Para lang makaangat-angat ka sa buhay. Gaya din for example ng mga illegal recruiter, ayan yung mga human trafficker yung mga yon, no? Na kung saan nagre-recruit sila ng mga trabahador kuno, no? Na kung saan is dadalhin nila sa ibang bansa, papangakuan nila ng trabaho, papangakuan nila ng magandang buhay, no? Pero pagdating doon sa bansang yan, doon na magsisimula ang kalbaryo, no? Kung saan kukunin nila ang kanilang mga passport, kukunin nila ang kanilang mga dokumento. Kapag nangyari 'yon, wala nang choice yung biktima. Kasi nasa ibang bansa na siya, mahihirapan na siyang humingi ng tulong. At kung wala kang mga dokumento, wala kang mga pagkakakilanlan na pwede mong ipresenta, mahihirapan kang humingi ng kaukulang tulong, no? At baka ikaw ay tatakutin pa na ikaw ay makulong. So ganun ang usually ginagawa nila, no? Hanggang sa makumbinsin nila or mapilit nila na magtrabaho na yung biktima nila in prostitution din, no? So yan na magsisimula ang kalbaryo nila, na kung saan is araw-araw, no, or hindi kaya yun na ang kanilang magiging buhay hanggang sa sila ay mawalan na ng value, no, kasi lahat naman tumatanda, no, at kapag tumatanda syempre bumababa yung value niya in terms of physical appearance and demand, kumbaga, mga ganun. So yun yung usually nakikita, no? May cases pa nga tayo that instead of human trafficking nagiging organ smuggling or organ trafficking, na kung saan is inaalis yung kanilang mga internal organs at ibebenta and so on. That's a worst case possible na pwedeng mangyari sa mga biktima, no? Pero yung iba usually is sa prostitution dinadala. And they will be under the tinatawag nating sex slavery or white slavery. No? So, that's for human trafficking. Ano, mahabang kwento yan pagdating dyan. But then, yun nga, ang pinaka-worst is pwede silang mamatay, no? Pwede silang mahawaan ng nakakahawang sakit, STDs, no? HIV, and so on. Yan yung mga pwedeng mangyari. Okay, so next topic is how these things, no? How these things like terrorism, human smuggling, human trafficking affects us globally. Ano yung implication niya? Of course, it's very obvious. Nagkakaroon tayo ng problema with regards to criminality, no? But what is not obvious are the following. Meron tayong mga hindi kasi napapansin with regards to the implication of this international problem into the global perspective, no? So we have here, for example, nagkakaroon tayo ng threats to the border integrity, no? Kung saan yung mga borders natin ay hindi na nire-respect. So how will it impact the country kapag labas-pasok yung mga iba't ibang tao, no? Sa bansang yan without them noticing it. So kumbaga, kung madali lang pumasok at lumabas sa bansang yan, so that's already an attack to the border integrity of that country, which of course will either decline their economic status, no, their economic stability and so on. Tignan nga natin yung mga hindi lang sa basta yung cases of trafficking, no, hindi lang sa tao kundi pati sa mga products, like for example yung mga rice, no, yung mga condiments natin, yung mga yung mga pwedeng ipasok na product. Imagine mo kapag let's say for example the supply on rice, this was observed, no, na ito nga ang naging dahilan kung bakit nakilala ang President Duterte nationwide because of the issues on rice smuggling. So tignan natin, yan lang, rice smuggling, how does it impacts the economy of the country, no? How does it impacted the situation of the farmers in Philippines kapag madali lang magpasok ng mga imported rice dito sa bansa natin illegally at madali lang din maglabas. So ang nangyayari, no, na oversupply ang ating bansa, na bumababa ang prices ng rice, bumababa ang kita ng mga farmers, nalulugi ang mga farmers kasi may mga smuggled rice na nakakapasok dito. So instead na yung mga local farmers ang kikita when it comes to selling rice, hindi na kasi yung mga smugglers na. Ang masama pa, they are not doing it legally. So ibig sabihin, nawawalan din ng income yung gobyerno natin kasi nga hindi nababayaran ng tax yung mga pumapasok na product. So that alone can impact already our economy. How much more if ang pinapasok at nilalabas are human resources, na yung mga tao na. So that could endanger the stability of the nation itself, no? Plus, no, isipin nyo ngayon, ano? Ngayon nga, no, even countries close their ports, no? Sinarado na nila ang kanilang airports, seaports, and many more, no? Bakit meron pa ring mga nakakapasok na mga taga-ibang bansa? Why? Because the problem is corruption in the government usually is the reason. So nababawasan yung border integrity, kumbaga, ng ating bansa dahil sa mga corrupt individuals who are in the government. So nakakapagpapasok pa rin sila ng mga ibang tao, no, na hindi dumadaan sa legal na proseso. Okay? So that's one. Next, threats to human health through the spread of HIV, no? These are the problems pre-pandemic, nung wala pang pandemic. Ngayon, hindi na napapansin ang issues ng HIV, sexually transmitted disease, and other diseases. Ngayon, the focus of the health system is usually for pandemic, for COVID-19. But still, no, that still hold the issues, or still interesting to talk about this. Kasi nga, isipin nyo, if pwedeng maglabas-pasok ang mga tao through illegal point of entrance and exit, no? Pwedeng mas lalo pang kumalat lalo ang cases natin ng COVID-19. So imaginein natin that accordingly wala namang na-detect na pumasok na galing India to had transferred or transmitted the Delta variant in our country. But why nagkaroon ng local transmission ng Delta variant? No? So pwede na naman na meron na namang kababalaghan na nangyari na kung saan meron na namang mga tao na nakapasok without them entering the legal entrance or entrance of our country. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng may mga taong pumasok na hindi dumaan sa legal na proseso. And that could worsen the cases of the COVID cases in our country. So pwedeng mangyari yan, no? Maraming butas, especially in our country, no? Kung titignan mo ang ating mapa, napapaligiran tayo ng tinatawag nating bodies of water, no? So with that, pwede talagang pumasok yung mga tao sa bansa natin using the back doors, no? Doon sa mga lugar na kung saan is hindi nababantayan ng ating mga the law enforcer elements that are the PCG, the Philippine Coast Guard, and the military forces that involved in protecting our seaports and our naval territory. So yan, no? It is also very threatening to know this na pwede pala na makapasok ang mga ibang tao sa bansa natin without entering into the legal entrance, no? So what if ang pumasok mga terorista, what if mga criminals, no, mga hardened criminals ang pumasok, then it is a very threatening scenario that our country could face if hindi natin nasolusyonan yung problema natin in relation to human trafficking, human smuggling, and terrorism. Okay, lastly, we have here yung dalawa pang possible implications or effect of the problems we cited, no? Threats to national and international security that could happen too, no? Since it is believed that many traffickers are connected to organized crime groups, which may then use the proceeds to fund other criminal activities such as terrorism. That's true, no? Unfortunately kasi hindi masyadong pinapansin yung mga issues on human trafficking, human smuggling, but they don't know that these are being governed or these are being supported, na? Ito, kontrolado yung mga cases natin. Pag sinabi nating trafficking, usually they're controlled and they are being controlled by and operated by criminal organization. At kapag hinahayaan lang natin yung mga cases na ito, no, anong nangyayari? Yumayaman or nagkakaroon pa ng mas maraming pera ang mga criminal organization. Kapag mapera ang isang criminal organization, it will increase their capacity to do whatever they want, no? To do whatever they want and do whatever they desire to a certain individual, to a certain group, to a certain country. So kung hinahayaan lang ng bansa natin ang mga issues nito, human trafficking and other forms of trafficking to polish, na what will happen? Yayaman ang mga criminal organization and they could fund themselves to commit more criminal activities or even terrorism kasi ang terrorist group are also involved in smuggling or other form of trafficking. Yan. So saan kumukuha ng pera ang mga criminal organization? Through their criminal activities that are not being controlled by the government, no? Yan, ang laking issue niyan, no? Pag pinayaman mo ng mga yan, babayaran na nila, kaya na nilang bilhin ang isang bansa, no? Through their money, no? That happened in, let's say, for example, Afghanistan, no? It's very common ngayon na take kumbaga kontrolado na ng Taliban. How did they manage to overthrow a certain government, no? Through their with that force, no? Kasi ako naniniwala ng isang gobyerno na kung saan is it's supported, it's an established government, has the ability to protect its land, no? And use all the possible resources that they have. And the terrorist group have limited source of funds, no? Let's say for example yung nangyari sa sa Marawi, ano? The yung mga nandun sa Marawi, no? Versus the government of the Philippines. Siyempre, no, mauubos ang resources ng maute, no? Kahit gaano pa sila katagal lumaban, mauubos ang kanilang resources. Mawawalan sila ng bala, mawawalan sila ng pagkain, mawawalan sila ng pondo, hanggang sa sila ay matalo ng gobyerno. Kasi ang gobyerno ng Pilipinas have a lot of sources na pwede lang gamitin in order to continue the fight. So that's how. Pero pag ang isang criminal organization have the same resources as a certain government, no? Kapag mas mataas na ang resources ng criminal organization kumpara sa isang government, definitely they can overthrow a certain government. So that's also one of the threatening scenario that we could think of kapag hinayaan lang natin mag-flourish itong mga criminal organizations na to. No? And lastly, the issues on smuggling, human trafficking, terrorism could pose a threat to the health, no, of our global human conscience. Kasi 'di ba sabi nga natin, we already surpassed the concept of slavery, no? 'Di ba? Kumbaga, we as a society had grown already this much na kung saan hindi na tayo yung barbaric individuals who would tolerate, who would benefit from white slavery and so on. But unfortunately, these different criminal activities is proving that it is not the case. No? Ang kumbaga, ang pinapatunayan lang ng nangyayari ngayon is meron pa ring human slavery na nangyayari. Meron pang mga factories which are operated and ang kanilang human resources are mga slave. Kumbaga, ina-underpay sila, kulang binabayad sa kanila, hindi maganda yung kanilang working conditions, no? Marami tayong ganyan, no? We are probably not aware, but there are still cases of slavery na nangyayari sa harap mismo natin. Even in our countries, meron pang nangyayari na ganyan, na kung saan inaalipin tayo, no, kapalit ng konting pera or unfair na labor and so on. So that's still a form of slavery, no? Modern slavery kung tinatawag, no? And that would involve also yung mga tinatawag nating white slavery or yung prostitution, no? So that's the global implication of the problem on human trafficking, terrorism, human smuggling, and so on. So I think I will end the lecture on that topic. No? I will be sending the module on the Facebook group later on. Okay? So that ends my lecture. It's now time for you to ask question. May mga tanong ba tayo?
Ayun. Sir, pwede po ba namin mapanood or makuha namin itong lesson? Kasi, sa medyo topic ako kanina sa pabago-bago yung ng audio mo.
Ay,
kaya nalalakas at bigla na lang yung natin.
Ay, okay, hindi. Don't worry kasi may recording, nire-record ko siya naman. So, i-upload ko na lang. Yun, so I'm very sorry for the audio. Hindi ko alam anong nangyayari. Siguro mahina lang yung aking internet connection right now. Yan. So, for that, no, para mapakinggan nyo ulit, i-upload ko ulit itong lecture natin, no? Anyway, recorded naman siya. Salamat, Miss Maria Antoinette. Any more? Ito ang hirap pag online kasi. Hindi tayo sure kung napapakinggan tayo or kung clear ba yung ating audio or hindi. So, with that, nire-record ko yung aking mga lecture para nang sa ganun ay pwede ninyong pakinggan ulit. Yan. So, mag-check lang ako ng attendance. Then, we will call it a day. Wala nang tanong, guys. Make
Sir, una na ako parte.
Ha? Ano po?
Una na ako sa attendance, Sir Palte.
Okay. Sige. Noted po. Ayan, inaano ko lang dito sa, ini-screenshot ko lang.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Okay, so if wala nang tanong guys, I've already checked your attendance. I do hope meron kayong natutunan. No? Kung medyo choppy kanina, balikan nyo na lang yung i-upload ko para mas maintindihan nyo together with the module and the presentation. So, if there's no more question guys, thank you very much for attending this session. See you on our next lecture. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you po, thank you po.
Bye,
Bye,
sir.
sir.
Bye,
Thank you.
sir.
Bye, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you po,
Bye,
bye-bye.
sir.
Bye-bye po.